My shoes are made of Spanish leather. My socks are made of silk. I wear a ring on every finger. I wash myself in milk. That is D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers. A woman can carry a bag, but it is the shoe that carries the woman. Christian Louboutin. Nicki Minaj has a better booty, but I have better shoes, said Rihanna. All right, Laura, quick question for you before we kick off this episode.
Okay.
What is the most expensive pair of shoes sold ever?
Like the price?
Yeah. Oh, no, the shoe. The shoe.
I want to say, I know that Stuart Weitzman, I believe, made one that was made with diamonds for the Oscars.
No,
Nope.
it is sold
There
at
you go.
auction in December of 2024.
Okay.
And it was one of the 4 surviving pairs of ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. Sold at auction for a price of $32 million US.
Wow.
Yeah.
Take me home.
Welcome to Made in Spain.
Welcome to Made in Spain, episode 2, season 2. We are your co-host, Laura Senior Garcia.
I'm Nalini Sharma.
And we cannot wait to share with you our love for shoes in this wonderful episode that we have constructed for our audience, really focused on shoes and the shoe industry here in Spain, manufacturing, brands, etc. So we're going back to some fashion, I would say, focused content for this episode.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay, so our shoe journey literally began by driving to the town of Elda.
So the triangle, you could say, of towns that are in the Valencian community that are very much focused on shoe manufacturing and have a tremendous history of shoe manufacturing, which we'll get into a little bit more, are Elda,
Yes.
Crevillente,
Yes.
and Elche.
Yes.
So traditionally, these towns, you know, for many, many years, they were most of the industry and the focus of the people who lived there, the inhabitants of the town, most of them worked in the shoe industry.
I mean, the history of Elda is that she said, what, 90% of the people that...
She said at one point, exactly 50% of the town. So let's just say the town has X amount of thousands. Exactly 50% of the town was working in the shoe manufacturing industry. And probably the other half was children and people who were not, working. So, maybe restaurant owners, etc. So
it's
most
almost
of the people,
the whole adult
to that.
population, in a sense.
So if you want to picture in terms of why we're speaking about this, there has been a lot of talk on the internet, on YouTube, on socials about Ubrique, which is this town in the south of Spain that specializes in leather treatment and craftsmanship and manufacturing for handbags.
Luxury handbags.
Exactly. High-end luxury handbags, the LVs of the world, etc., etc., although cannot fully disclose, who makes what there because of the confidentiality agreements. Elda, Crevillente, and Elche are kind of in a similar position in this space where, although there's still a lot of manufacturing for not so much the high-end luxury that goes on, there is some manufacturing that goes on for the very high-end luxury. So it's kind of like the Ubrique of shoes.
Absolutely.
And also we found out that some of the leather that they're using to manufacture the shoes is coming from Ubrique, but they're actually, focused on, instead of handbags, shoes.
It's very interesting because if anyone has been to Elda, first of all, I think you have to have an intent to go there. It's not a town that you just
There's no beach.
There's no beach, and it's in the interior, it's inside. So you have to purposely drive there. You have to have a reason to drive there.
Absolutely.
Which we did find a reason. We went to the Shoe Museum.
And we'll talk a bit about that, but mind-blowing how you can have such an institution in a town that maybe doesn't have so many attractions,
No.
but that you really, unless you kind of somehow know about it, it's not on the radar. Like people know to go to Valencia to the Oceanographic,
of course,
and they know that stuff. But to go to, if you are, and I will declare myself here, I am a shoeaholic. I am a shoe lover. I've always been. I'm wearing one of my first most coveted pairs of shoes, which I'll show at some point because I can barely move in them. But definitely for me, it was such an experience and such a journey to go to that shoe museum. And also from a personal standpoint, you know, my grandmother and my great grandmother, they were all somehow involved in the shoe manufacturing industry. And I have a lot of people in my family that still are involved on my mom's side.
Right.
From Elche, from Elda. I asked my mom this weekend, how much did grandma get paid to make the soles of the Valencianas, which were like the, you know, the Mallorquinas, kind of like what you're wearing now, but the flat ones. Yes. And she said, oh, I don't know, but it must have been like, you know, one portion of a peseta at the time, you know, just such a little bit. But she had 6 kids. She was trying to support her family. So they brought her extra work to the house when she could no longer go to the factory. So it is an industry that has carried that area for a long time.
And I think what's interesting, the reason that you have high-end luxury brands manufacturing here in Spain is for the artisanship that has been passed down from generation to generation, and also the quality of the goods and the confidentiality. Yes. Because we started to do a little bit of research to see if we could actually find out definitively the brands that are manufacturing here. And we spent how many, 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe with these experts who know the answers, but she wouldn't really tell us.
She just kept smiling and going, okay, like, next question, next question.
Do they make these shoes here? And it's like, no, I can't say anything.
Online, there are some journalists that have published some articles that do say that Hermes, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and a number of the brands in that range are all using 1 or 2 factories in Elda specifically. So again, we couldn't visit the factory. No one picked up the phone. No one answered our emails because it is confidential. However, you know, there is evidence that they are manufacturing there. So
and it's for the leather too. It's the quality of the leather, quality of the goods.
And also because there is still very much a manual process involved in manufacturing high-end shoes, what they were explaining to us at the wonderful Shoe Museum, the curator of the museum was actually explaining that it's almost like genetically people are, you know, through generations and generations of particularly women working on how they put these very, very fine pieces of leather together is something that they've learned from when they were little. There's a university there that helps people learn how to work with that leather and how to make the shoes. So I think the attraction for the brand is probably the same as what attracts them to do the bags in Ubrique, is, you know, the end-to-end process is going to be done at the utmost quality.
Right. And it's just so funny that when you go to this town, not a lot. I mean, we drove it's one main road because my son was Google Mapsing in the back, and she kept asking him, which way do I turn? And he said, there's one road in, just stay on the road.
Also, the other thing that's pretty fascinating is that, you know, you would think, oh, all this stuff's getting manufactured here. Maybe we're going to find some cool stores that we can, you know, go. No. Like, okay, is there like a such and such store here? No, there's no. And I know from people in my family that, you know, Stuart Weissman, also Beverly Feldman, there's a lot of very high-end shoe brands. None of those stores exist there. No. And obviously, the other thing, again, around the confidentiality, there's no way to go and purchase directly from the factory.
No, we were really hoping that would be the case, but no.
Some cowboy boots, you know, you can go and purchase directly from the factory.
And we did go to a store, but they only have sample sizes.
Yes.
So and you have to be that size.
My wonderful 41 and the sample size is a 36. It ain't happening. 36 or 37. I think the other thing that's interesting on this luxury brand piece, it's like, okay, so why would the brands not really declare that they're making the shoes in Spain? So I'm wearing YSLs.
Yeah.
They're made in Italy. Okay. maybe they are made in Italy, maybe they're not. I don't know, because sometimes even though it says made in Italy, it may be that they put the last piece of the shoe there, and then maybe the rest of it is made here. Who knows? But the point is that I think we want to romanticize that. Oh, you know, you're buying this Gucci shoe. There has to be this like tiny little Italian factory where...
I don't think it's the romantic side. I think it's the dollar sign side. Yeah. So the reason that they want to charge that money, and I'm guilty of purchasing products in these stores, is because it's the cachet behind it, that it was, you know, made in Paris, and Paris has that, you know, je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, it's like good luck finding a factory in Paris.
It's not like, happening.
It's 400 euros for a hotel room any given night of the year. So
I think that's what it comes down. I mean, I think the romance comes in maybe in the advertising, but
absolutely.
When it comes down to it, they want towns like that where maybe the people making it don't necessarily even have an affinity for it.
Absolutely
They
not.
might just think that, like, look, who are these stupid people that are going to pay 2,000 euros for a pair of sandals?
Absolutely. So one thing as well with this, through the visit to the Shoe Museum, and also something we wanted to bring up in this deep dive on this episode about shoes, is really fascinating the history of shoes, and also not just the history, but how particularly both women and men, actually, because we kind of spoke about that a little bit, relate to shoes, maybe more even so than clothes. Like, shoes through history have been a social status kind of symbol. I was telling Nalini that Louis XIV decided that only him and his court could wear red shoes. Everybody else was not allowed to wear red shoes.
And men traditionally wore high heel shoes.
Yes, and we talked about the saying, you know, to be well-heeled meant that, you know, you were well off, or, you know, that you had money to spend, you could say. Yeah. So I think it's quite fascinating. What was your kind of most shocking moment of the Shoe Museum that you think was like I
would say just the amount of shoes that they had. There are over 4,000 pairs of shoes in the collection. I mean, it's astounding.
Including John Paul.
Yeah, they have the Pope.
The shoes.
They have Princess Diana. They have her the mold that was used to make her shoes.
And Queen Elizabeth.
They have. I mean, it just is. It's not endless, obviously, but it goes on for a long time.
It's a good 2-hour visit. If you are into it, you know, and if you want to see the machines, the sewing machines, the collection of sewing machines and tools with which they make the shoes are absolutely outstanding.
I actually thought that was one of the more, I found it interesting because when you're in there and you're looking at all these sewing machines and where they come from, some of them are from England, some of them are from different parts of Europe, German, America, and you're walking through and you're looking at the dates and the person who donated it, and then you think maybe this sewing machine like sewed flags or uniforms for soldiers, they were in wars and like the women used them. There's a story behind each machine. Obviously they don't know what the story is, but it is a very different experience, I would say.
I think one creepy moment that we had in the museum, because obviously there's a lot of things there, you know, you imagine, you know, walk in someone's shoes, you know, it's even, you know, you have like energy from the people who kind of wore those and used the furniture. We walked up to the books from one of the factories that had donated all the furniture. Yeah. And it's the Check and Balance book. Yeah. And it was open
to our date.
To the exact date, the 14th of February.
Yes.
Because, you know, love of shoes. We went on Valentine's. 1953, which it was kind of like, whoa, that's weird, you know. And again, coincidences and statistically, you know, do exist. But I thought that was really something neat. And we asked the curator, like, did you do this? Did you do this on purpose where you put the date?
She said like, no. She said no. But she also said that she's
seen things. She's seen things, and she doesn't like to be there in the evening by herself, for sure. So,
but what a funny and interesting building, because it is in the center of the little town. It's a huge building, and it's just open to the public. You can go in and spend the morning looking at shoes.
They modernized the first floor.
Yeah.
And they're going to do the same with the other floors. So architecturally, it's also very interesting.
Yeah.
So definitely think that, if you're in the area, or even if you have to travel for like an hour or something, it's definitely worth
not far.
visiting. And they treated us fantastically.
Really, really nice.
One thing that I think it touched my heart that, the curator from the museum told us about the history of the forgotten women.
Yeah.
Because as the industrial revolution around shoes was happening, it was a time where it wasn't really accepted to be a lady that owned a shoe factory, or even be the one that was designing or anything of significance other than the actual manufacturing process.
Right.
So a lot of them had to hide behind their husband, behind, their brothers, their fathers, even though they were the ones that were running it or owning it.
And they have a space, a wall dedicated to the women, and her
Grandmother.
Yeah, her grandmother's picture was up there.
Her grandmother's picture is up there. So
Yeah.
definitely a very, very cool experience. Want to mention a couple of the brands maybe that I think are made in Spain that, I definitely recommend people to check out. So definitely for sure the Lodi brand,
Yes.
Lodi.
Yep.
They manufacture and design here. One that I was a little bit disappointed about was actually Alma en Pena, because it's one of my favorite brands.
Their shoes are super cute,
They're
by the way.
super cute, but they're made in China. So, that's something that, even though you would think, they're pretty expensive, so maybe they're manufactured here. They're not. They're manufactured in China, but they kind of push the whole Spanish brand thing because they have an office and because, so those two, and I like I said, even though they're manufactured in China, Alma en Pena is still, it's still a kind of nice shoe.
Yeah, no, they're beautiful. I love them. And also Tony Pons.
Yeah, do you wanna tell our audience what happened
Oh,
when
it was
we
very
walked into
funny.
the Tony Pons store in Benidorm?
It seems like we go to Benidorm a lot. I
Even
don't
though,
know.
like, we're almost never there, but it always comes up. It's like
I don't know.
love-hate relationship with this town.
Somehow we were there again,
Yeah.
and we walked into, I think they just opened the store, Tony Pons, in Benidorm. It's a new store. They're, how would you describe it? There's some very traditional shoes, but still kind of
They're very
hip.
fashionable.
Yeah, they're very hip.
They're like these new Mallorquinas and
Yeah,
all that. They're very,
kind
very
of.
fashionable. You're wearing them today. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how we can show them on camera without doing anything
yeah.
weird, but we'll maybe take a picture and post it on socials later.
But as soon as we walked in the store, the woman said, "Made in Spain, not in China," and we
It's kind
both
of-
just stopped and we were like,
Well,
we
okay,
didn't even
good
ask-
morning to you
Yeah.
too. So we walked in and literally, and then as we were in there looking around at shoes, every person that came in, she's like, "Made in Spain, not in China." So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, they have told this poor lady.
She
has
has
to
to say
say
to
this to
everybody.
every person that walks in the store like 100 times a day.
Yeah,
So
it's very funny.
that commitment to try and bring some of this high-end manufacturing back to this country.
Well, we tried to go to Picolinos,
Yes.
but our email was answered, but they were a
They
little
didn't
bit
want us
reluctant.
snooping around.
Yeah.
So
But their brand it's a lovely brand. They make
It is.
boots and mostly boots, I would say. No,
they're very well known for boots, but campers, same thing. There's
Yeah.
a lot kind of like high quality, high end leather. I have to mention this about the shoe museum as well. The Venetian shoes.
Oh, they were unbelievable.
They were so cool. Kind of like I would say drag queen shoes of,
Yeah.
Venetian times. I guess people didn't want to spoil their nice outfits if you were part of the kind
Right.
of high society with the dirty water. And they wore these shoes that were like a meter high.
Yes. So what I found interesting is that when you start sort of from the beginning in the museum and you start looking at all the shoes and you think of shoes of today's high-end designers, they're basically copies of shoes throughout history.
Over and over again. So
I
that
mean, you
definitely,
can see
we saw
each.
that.
You can look at a pair of shoes from 250 years ago and say,
Yep.
"Yeah, I know it. I can see the design in today's society in modern times."
One thing I will say that was interesting to me is that I told Nalini and I mentioned to the curator several times, have you noticed how small these shoes are? And they were very narrow. And she said, yes, actually, it turns out I guess human beings, our feet are getting bigger,
Yeah.
over generations. I mean, some of the shoes were so narrow that you would think wouldn't even fit on like a child.
No, I
know,
guess
so
they would bind their feet.
it's kind of like a corset for feet. They were
Yes.
trying to make that.
And they
kind
also
of,
have sports basketball shoes. They had John Ram, his shoes, which
the
are
golf player.
gigantic, by the
He's
way.
a big boy.
He has very large feet. That's all I'm going to say.
Moving on. All right, perfect. So we are going to our slice of life soon. Okay. Slice of life, episode 2, season 2, for the love of shoes.
Yes. Okay, let's discuss. Well, cheers first.
Cheers.
I'll note that there is more in my glass than yours. We haven't even had anything to drink. Just laughing. Okay. Laura, what are you wearing on your feet?
All right, I'm going to actually take them off. For people who are watching us on YouTube or on our socials, this is a Yves Saint Laurent shoe. It's made in Italy. And I think I've had these for over 10 years.
Wow.
Beckham really popularized this shoe.
Victoria Beckham.
Not David Beckham. Victoria Beckham really popularized the shoe. I think she had them like in every color. Legend goes that she actually got Botox on her toes, so she was able to walk around in them. And believe it or not, I can't put this back on right now, so I'm going to take them off.
She says, a quote from Victoria Beckham is that she cannot think unless she has high heels on.
Well, let's put it this way. In these heels, you cannot think after a little bit of having them on. I love these shoes. I was walking around a mall in Houston one time, and I was actually with my father, and he wanted to treat me to something, and he said, is there anything you want? And I said, oh, those YSL shoes are so beautiful.
Oh.
And he actually got them for me.
Aww,
so they,
that's really sweet.
Every time I've tried to wear them, anyone that I'm with are like, where are you going in those? Because it's like they're so crazy high. So they're the kind that, you'll have like on basically on a stand or something, and you admire them, but you can't really walk anywhere in them.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because if you think about before COVID and after COVID, the whole shoe thing has, made a big shift where most of us are quite comfortable investing money into like high-end trainers, especially men,
Oh my goodness, that's a whole other topic.
One of the most popular podcasts and YouTube channels is, guys like buying, really high-end trainers, which
I think it's good though.
I think
actually
it's good.
because it's raised the level
Someone
for
else needs to spend the money.
But it's raised the level for everybody. And that's also, I think, the effect of social media, that you are always taking pictures. People are always taking photos. So you kind of have to dress, like elevate your style.
Well, it's kind of funny because some people are like, oh, people just dress up for social media. I'm like, so what?
It's better.
Point is that everybody's more dressed up and we all look a little bit nicer instead of maybe just showing up to an event or something more, sloppy because, you're kind of like, so slice of life, super happy to be drinking this wonderful white wine that was recommended by one of our newest collaborators, Letty from Handpicked Wines.
Yeah, they have a really interesting story. I think it's a very similar partnership, Spanish and an expat, two women together. In Madrid, they were looking to collaborate, to work in the wine space, and they came up with this idea. It's a subscription service. Every 2 months you get a
6
box.
bottles.
So it's a box, 6 bottles of wine, which are literally handpicked.
But different. So not the same 6. So today we actually told Letty that we were going to be eating some burrata, and we'll explain why we are having an Italian cheese in our Made in Spain podcast. And she recommended this white wine, which is a La Pola Ribeira Sacra from 2021, and it's delicious. It's not very sweet because she knew we were going to be having it with something sweet. So encourage you to go check out Handpicked Wines. I think they're all over socials. We'll leave a link as well. And, I think it's a very, very cool concept, kind of bringing a community of people who are wine curious together.
Yeah. And what's interesting that she said is that young people are not into wine.
Not even just wine. A lot of times not drinking a lot of alcohol, although I don't know which young people she is talking about, but apparently not a lot of wine. So, they're trying to also bring back this culture of wine, which is so, tied to the identity of Spanish life. The other thing as well that I think is worth mentioning about the hand-picked wine story is that each one of the wines that they do handpick has an underlying theme of sustainability in some way or other. Yeah. So it's either the way it's made or the way it's packaged. Yeah, the bottling, there's a theme around sustainability around it.
Yeah, and they do their research because she said in a few weeks she's heading down closer to us to visit a winery to learn about it. So, yeah, it is really handpicked.
So cheers to that. Letty and handpicked wines. Thank you very much.
Okay, so
now let's talk about why we picked burrata.
Well, on the way when we decided that we're going to Elda, I said I'll find a restaurant so we could have lunch there.
Yes.
I did a simple Google search, Elda restaurants. That was it. Nothing more than that.
Specialized research.
And Chez Ragazzi came up, which has been voted one of the best Italian restaurants in the community of Valencia, which is to me really funny that it was in Elda. And I'm not knocking Elda or anything like that, but it's just, I mean, you have to go to Elda to go to this restaurant.
Yeah. So I would say the restaurant is way up there.
Yes.
Again, you're competing against in places like Valencia that have hundreds of Italian restaurants. So it is very significant that,
Absolutely.
They're like, actually, I believe at some point one year they won like best Italian restaurant of the Valencian community.
I mean, I doubted it to the point where I made the reservation and then I made my son call to confirm. And I kept telling him, no, ask him because he speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
I'm always like, no, you need to ask them.
Are you in Elda?
And then he said, no. And I said, no, ask him for sure. It's in Elda, not in Alicante. And he said, no, we're in Elda. Okay. And I still doubted it until we were walking after we parked the car to see the distance from the museum to the restaurant. I was like, okay, it's actually here. But it's an authentic Italian restaurant. They have a wood-fired a pizza oven.
Pizza was on fire.
So that's why we decided to do a little...
So it's burrata, but we also
combo.
have the date. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the episode, we talked about Elche as part of that triangle, Crevillente, Elche, and Elda. And Elche has a very, very special garden, which they call the Huerto del Cura. And that is where they have all these palm trees with dates. So dates are extremely prominent in the culture in Elche.
We should go.
Yeah. And you can go and buy like fresh dates, like the fresh yellow ones that come straight from the palm tree. So
dates, I mean, I've never really been a fan, but I have to say I actually like these.
Food of God.
Yeah. Okay. Wait, I should try the burrata. How is it?
Okay. Good. So Nalini's made the burrata here with some toast. And I've got white stuff all over my face. This is what happens when you eat stuff while you're doing a podcast. Okay.
Oh, it tastes good.
So, burrata with some fruit, with some very strong olive oil that we picked this time.
Yeah, really
accompanied by some dates.
It's actually a really nice recipe. I tried, other than the cheese, everything else is local. The fruit, the basil, the dates, the olive oil. It's a nice little combo.
I love some basil.
Yeah. Is this the phrase of the day?
Chew. Okay.
Phrase of the day?
Before we go to the phrase of the day, I do want to give a shout out. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a sip of wine. So, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, when we were leaving the shoe museum, we said, okay, do you have a shop or do you have something we can take with us?
Yeah.
It's like, man, you're not, really overselling any. Like, can we buy something? And they said, okay, there's these little shoes that we have that are key rings, and it's a real shoe. It actually is made from leather, and a 94-year-old man makes them from start to finish by hand. And they actually have on the bottom Museo del Calzado in Elda. So they actually have like the stamp. So
really cute.
I just think connected with that. It's like, oh my goodness, here's this like someone who could very well be retired and is still making like little key rings for the museum. So
It's very nice.
neat little
And
story.
also when I was leaving, the woman who's in charge of the museum, she showed me a little wallet that was stamped with the museum's logo. And she told me, she's like, look, this leather is same
It's
as...
like, does this red leather remind you of anything? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, the canvas leather from Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, she said it's the same leather.
Yeah. It's like, don't tell anyone we said that.
But we just told.
Okay.
Wait, okay, I'm ready.
All right,
Hold
are you
on.
ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Wait.
Again, we're going, this is still soft.
Okay.
We'll get there by our cocktail episode, which is our episode 3. So episode 2, sentence of the day from Pablo Picasso.
Oh, okay.
Just so that you can see that we also bring in culture into, these conversations. Okay, the sentence is, dame el zapato y yo pintaré a la persona.
Okay. Give me your shoe.
Give me the shoe.
The shoe.
And
So
again, this is Picasso. So
I can paint
and I will
paint
the person.
the person. Oh,
Dame el
okay.
zapato y yo pintaré a la
That's a
persona.
good one.
Famously said by Pablo Picasso. What do you think that means?
I think the shoe shows your personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, give me the shoe and I'll paint the person. Like,
What do those shoes say about you, Laura?
that I'm crazy for trying to walk in them. Thank you, everyone. Hope you
Yeah.
enjoyed our Love of Shoes episode and looking forward to connecting with you for our next episode.
Cheers.
Which is going to be all about the cocktail culture.
Cocktail culture.